me today argue in favor of moral pluralism. You'll see that why I don't think it entails moral relativism. But what I will be arguing is nobody seems to want to acknowledge the obvious state of affairs. We don't agree foundationally about moral issues. So you're off on a journey with 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 50 times great-grandson of Protagoras. I'm here to say that what you thought you knew, you really didn't know, and you don't know it the way Socrates said you would know it. So what it is like, if it succeeds, like all presentations in philosophy, it's about the obvious. To remind you, obviously, one, we do not agree about substantive moral issues. Two, we don't have the resources ever by sound rational argument to pick out which is the canonical secular morality. And therefore, we have no grounds to be able to say we could isolate that bioethics which is canonical. Therefore, there is no global bioethics that has secular, rational, moral authority. You all have a handout. I'm a dinosaur. I do not use PowerPoints. We'll follow this along. And it starts off by telling you that what we've, and I'm going to read a few paragraphs, then go back and tell you how the argument is going. It says, this presentation confronts the moral pluralism that defines the human condition, shapes the significance of bioethics, and makes a global bioethics authorized by a common secular moral authority impossible. Off to the second paragraph. We do not agree regarding the content of morality. We therefore do not agree regarding the content of bioethics. Since many deny the existence of moral diversity and, in fact, strongly assert the existence of moral consensus, these reflections address a matter of significant importance for an adequate assessment of a critical understanding of the phenomenon of bioethics. So what I will do, to some extent, is undermine the foundations of bioethics as a discipline that could tell you what you ought to do with the authority of sound rational argument. So I will be undermining. In the background, I'll have to come back to a question, why did people ever believe it could do this to begin with? Now, also, I will obviously have to deconstruct it. I will do it at the end of the presentation, appeals to consensus, but probably all of you are smart enough to know that appeals to consensus have no moral force at all unless you know how many people have to agree about anything in morality to make it true. Generally, we don't hold that concurrence about matters of physical reality, empirical reality, which is not moral, can be decided by mere consensus. We've got to understand who are the moral experts, and that's what we disagree about. So it won't be the possibility that we will be able to find any normative consensus about anything. And if everyone agreed, it still wouldn't follow that that which they agreed about was, in fact, the case. So that's the background. What this is trying to do is to say, whatever, if you had thought about bioethics as an intellectual endeavor that would aid you in knowing what you ought to do, grounded by the authority of moral rationality, abandon all hope. Roman numeral 1. There is no common morality and there is no common bioethics, because to have a common morality, one must share a common set of settled judgments about how to rank cardinal human values and right-making conditions. Disagreements in this regard lead to disagreements about when it is obligatory, licit, or forbidden to take life, have sex, or transfer property against the will of the owner. About these matters there is profound and often passionate disputes. To appreciate this diversity, one need only consider such issues of general dispute, such as capital punishment, homosexuality, and social democratic welfare agendas. Imagine if you wanted to determine which was the best country in the world, Illinois or Singapore. And you said, well, we at least rank very highly in the determination of which is the best polity, concerns about liberty, equality, prosperity, and security. Everything in answering that question will be determined by the ranking you give to liberty, equality, prosperity, and security. If you rank them like a Rawlsian would rank them in Rawls's thin theory of the good, then you put liberty first, then equality second, and then prosperity third. But if you rank them like a good person brought up in Singapore, you would say, no, the first thing you want to be is secure. Then you want to be rich. You'll take what freedoms are available that are still compatible with being secure and rich, and who cares about equality? Everything turns upon the background moral sense that one brings to answering the question. You understand that? If you ask what would a disinterested moral observer choose, the answer, it'll choose nothing unless you fit it out with the right moral sense, and then it'll give the answers that you want from it. So what one does by this picture of how to choose the best country, recognize to do that you already have to agree as to what values are those that make human flourishing achievable. B, a common morality cannot be established by sound rational argument, such as possible if and only if one shares, and we do not, common moral premises and common rules of moral evidence. If you don't have it, it won't work. That understanding, that recognition, is as old as Protagoras' response to Socrates' moral project, but it was well summarized by Clement of Alexandria, a man who lived from the end of the 2nd and into the 3rd century, and also summarized in Agrippa's famous Pentatropoi. Agrippa is recorded in a book called The Lives of Illustrious Philosophers, written probably in the very early part of the 3rd century, in which he goes through and shows why you'd never be able to presume that moral philosophers would be able to resolve the kinds of controversies we face in bioethics. First, he points out philosophers have been trying to do it for the last 700 years and hadn't succeeded yet. Two, when they argue from different perspectives and therefore past each other. If you would want to use a Kuhnian term within different paradigms, or Fleckian term within different Denkkollektiven with different Denkstilen. And lastly, the last three pentoi of the Pentatropoi are that you will always beg the question, argue in a circle, have an infinite regress if you don't have established moral premises and rules of evidence. So already, way before we even began into the Middle Ages in the West, there were good reasons to understand that the project of moral philosophy would not succeed in doing what it hoped to do.